Good morning and welcome to the Planning and Development Committee meeting of Toowoomba Regional Council. This meeting is open to the public and will also be live streamed. I would like to thank those who are in the room with us today and acknowledge everyone watching via Council's social media channels. Reminder, councillors to join the meeting in board view. So to open, I'd like to acknowledge the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse these lands we meet on today, the Western Waka Waka, Jibal and Jarawar peoples, and pay respects to their elders past, present, emerging, for they hold the knowledge, rich traditions and bold ambitions of Australia's first people. Now we have no apologies advised, noting a leave of absence for Councillor James O'Shea, and no resolution is required. We have no declaration of prescribed conflict of interest and no declaration of declarable conflict of interest. So we'll move to item 3, which is the Toowoomba Regional Planning Scheme Project Quarterly Update. Now I note that this is a confidential meeting, so I have a motion that Council 1, only the attachment is confidential, so we don't need to go into confidential. So I'd like to welcome Ed and team to hand over.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, I'm pleased to present the first quarterly update on the Toowoomba Regional Planning Scheme project, covering the period from 11 November to 20 February 2026. During the first reporting period under the new focused approach, the project has progressed from its establishment phase into early implementation, with substantial advancements achieved across governance, procurement, resourcing and preparatory engagement activities. Key governance arrangements are now firmly in place. The project board and a project control group have been formally established and are operating under a tailored terms of reference, providing strengthened oversight and clear decision-making pathways to allow for the project to progress. Consultant procurement has successfully been finalised, with Articulus, Meridian Urban and the Therefore Group commencing their respective roles in late February. Complementing this, a dedicated planning scheme delivery team has been established, including the appointment of the principal planning scheme delivery position and supporting planning and project staff, ensuring that the project is well resourced for the drafting and coordination demands ahead. A significant development this quarter has been the introduction of the state's streamlined plan-making process, supported by a newly formed state interest reference group. This mechanism provides earlier and more collaborative engagement with state agencies, delivering efficiencies within the statutory review process. And as a result of this opportunity, a revised plan-making process is contained within confidential attachment 1. The attachment is confidential as it outlines key dates and milestones to progress the project along with the state, and it needs to be accepted by both parties, and it hasn't yet been done so. Should Council endorse this report and the state accept that notice, it will then form a public document and placed on the project website. The project management has been updated accordingly to align with this revised pathway, and to align with this, the project management plan now requires council endorsement as it constitutes a major change. As touched on earlier, key changes within that include updated governance arrangements to reflect the establishment of the project board and the updated internal resourcing structures, integrating the local government infrastructure plan project into the overall planning scheme scope, incorporating the new chief executive notice timeframes, which are contained within confidential attachment 1, embedding E-plan and ISA plan workflows and future AI readiness into the planning scheme to modernise drafting and digital delivery, and extending the project objectives to acknowledge both the interim LGIP work and the preparation of a new local government infrastructure plan. In addition to this, the Planning and Development Policy and Technical Advice Reference Group has been established following a strong response to the expression of interest process, with 25 nominations received across planning, engineering, architecture, urban design, environmental sciences, economics and the development industry. This group will provide high quality multidisciplinary technical advice throughout the drafting process to officers, and finalisation of those appointments are underway. I think that concluded yesterday. The project remains on schedule, with drafting and engagement activities continuing through 2026, the state interest review targeted for late 2026 and public consultation for early 2027. Final adoption is anticipated towards the end of 2027, and the progress achieved this quarter provides a strong and coordinated foundation as we move into the substantive drafting and engagement phase of delivering a contemporary integrated planning scheme for the Toowoomba region. Thank you, councillors, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ed. We have a question from Councillor Tim.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Good morning, Ed, Sonia and your team. Thank you for this. I think it's very well set out and provides us everything we need to know about how the planning scheme is coming. I wanted to pick up on, well, my first question was going to be your technical advice reference group. I think you just said then in passing that you've just finalised who's on it. So I was going to ask, it says first meeting March. Have you had your first meeting? But I think the answer is no, you've just finalised who's on it. So I'll take that as answered. There is an interesting table called Key Milestones that I think this is the first time we've actually gone to the public with official timelines with what we're working to. And the biggest part of that is Council decides to adopt draft planning scheme in November 2027. This is Table 1, Key Milestones. Great that we've set a date. Sorry, Chair, you're going to...
I believe that's in confidential.
No, that's Table 1, Key Milestones.
Sorry, okay.
In the
Sorry,
report agenda. That's why I've read it. I double-checked that. November 2027. Ed, how confident are you with those timelines, and what do we need to do or change to keep them?
Thank you for the question through the chair. With the thematic engagement that we're looking to undertake with the council through the CIS process and through policy development, we're very confident that as we engage with council on a particular issue, those issues where we've historically engaged, the body of work then occurs below the line with the consultant groups to then build out the text within the scheme itself to achieve that policy objective. So it's quite an iterative delivery process where heavy engagement occurs with council to bed down and square away, I guess, the key policy positions. And then there's a very significant effort to commit pen to paper and actually build out the scheme below that. So what we've done is broken across, I think it's 12 thematic groups within the planning scheme, and we'll be engaging quite heavily at a regular cadence with council through that period to get the scheme to a point where we then engage with the state, and that engagement exercise is ongoing as well. So there's no surprises, and the intent is that as we work through this, there's no surprises to council, there's no surprises to the state as we begin to test particular issues and let them know the will of the council to deal with particular policy items, and then bed that down through the scheme. As we arrive at issues that may be at odds with each other from a policy development perspective, and that's a natural course of consequence within planning where you're balancing objectives, we'll continue to check that in. It'll be quite an iterative process through that.
Thank you for that, Ed. Ambitious, but I thank you for putting pen to paper and going to the community. This is what we're working to, so I appreciate that. Can I just ask a follow-up, Chair, if I may, on a different thing? We've got the planning scheme, and we've got this body of work called LGIP, which is Local Government Infrastructure Plan, which is all of the, basically sets out our trunk infrastructure requirements, like parks and sewage and all that. So one of the changes you've brought to us today is that they're two large bodies of work that are becoming one. One, I don't think anyone outside of the City Hall walls knows what that is, but can you just talk to me, is that two different bodies of work coming together, or are there so many overlaps that it should work seamlessly?
It's quite funny. They are one body of work. We've just treated them as separate bodies of work for, I suspect, convenience in delivery over time. It is fundamental and a core part of some of the challenges that exist with delivery of housing across Queensland, that zoning ambitions need to be matched by infrastructure delivery. And so what we're looking to do is ensure that as council contemplates zoning patterns, planning scheme patterns of development that occur across the city, that we are in lockstep with an infrastructure servicing strategy to enable that to occur over time in the most orderly and efficient way possible.
Thanks, Councillor Tim. Councillor Carey?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, GM and Sonia for the report. I have submitted a list of questions. Whether you want to just handle that yourself, or I'm happy to ask them individually, whichever.
Happy to work through them, and if I neglect to answer, please
Yeah,
please hold me to
just
account.
that first one might be better dealt with and confidential. I don't know, but it's a matter for yourself. Thank you.
I think the first one, in terms of why is that first attachment confidential? It's because it hasn't yet been agreed by the parties. So what we're looking to do is ensure that the specific milestones within that are agreed by council and supported by council, but we also need the state government to agree to those as well through that notice, what's called the CEO notice. Once those are agreed, and there's some negotiation that needs to occur, particularly with the state around their resourcing, and a number of local governments are working through a very similar process. So we want to make sure that both parties can meet that cadence, and then once that's agreed, it is intended that document actually becomes a public-facing document.
I suppose what I was concerned, what I was intrigued about was that those sort of discussions are not sort of commercial in the normal sense, I would have thought, but I accept your explanation.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of the need for 3 consultant groups to undertake the body of work, the consultant teams are very much working through the tender briefs that were issued by council in November following the council endorsement of the project management plan, and I guess the pathway to deliver the project within the timeframe and the prioritisation set by council. Those 3 consultants have been selected to conduct work where we don't have capacity or sufficient skills, specialist knowledge to address those key issues, and they're augmenting the internal project delivery team. So very much working with us, working with officers to ensure that as they impart their knowledge within the scheme, they're imparting that across staff as well, so that we're gaining both a body of work from that, as well as upskilled staff through the program. The nature of the work that they're undertaking is quite specialised. So across hazard and hazard integration, a very specialised area of town planning, there are a very few number of people across Queensland that do that work. So that's one area. I guess the delivery and the bulk of text writing within the scheme is another as well, and that's certainly one where we're looking to augment internal council resources, and then communications and engagement specific to, I guess, planning and planning issues, a very specific type of work, and again, quite specialised in terms of the nature of those conversations, particularly as you get into hazard integration, flood mapping. There are some local governments across Queensland at the moment that are undertaking a very detailed body of work around engagement in that. It's quite a specialised area because it relates to planning concepts, I guess. So historically, a lot of the communication folk in that area are trained town planners.
I take it different consultants have different skills.
Correct, yes. We anticipate, in terms of the cost to close out the project, something in the order of $1.5 to $2 million to continue to work through both that consultant work as well as the legal advice, the testing of the new scheme as it works through, and then the closeout. So there's a significant body of work that remains, but we're working through that, and I guess the consultant and the augmentation works through that, and that will be an ongoing consideration of council through budget exercises and the like. The revised plan making process from the state, I might ask Sonia if you can talk to that.
Yes, certainly. So the state approached us and they're looking for us to work with them in an iterative way. So standard approach for a state interest review is that we complete a total draft, then we send that complete draft off to the state. They then issue it to the numerous state government offices throughout numerous departments to ensure that we are complying with their policy directions, that we are compliant with all the state, and that it's good plan making. So that takes a period of time. Some of the times that can take up to 3 to 6 to 9, and we've seen it go into years in terms of doing that type of review once we've got a complete and finalised draft. So we're working with the state. We'll be having meetings with their state interest reference group, which is chaired by the state department. and they have got all of their specialist experts that will be working with us as we're drafting, and we will be able to issue draft components and elements of the scheme for us to get feedback whilst we're actually drafting. So it's really about having that consistent conversation with them rather than actually drafting a complete draft, sending it off. It gets issued to all the different departments. We then get a series of questions, a series of matters that need to be addressed. There's the backwards and forwards that goes through that process. We're basically bringing that forward and working in partnership with the state. So once we do have a final draft that's endorsed by council to be submitted to the state, that process is quite substantially condensed because they can go back to the notes going, yes, it's all in compliance with what we actually have discussed throughout the preparation of the scheme.
And that's the essence of the revised scheme is.
That's right, that's right. And that's why it's had an impact on the timing that we've been able to work. So we've been able to work that into our project schedule. So we should be meeting with them every 4 to 6 weeks.
Thank
you. The necessity of quarterly reports, I think, councillors, it's fair to say that as part of my onboarding within the organisation, the importance of this project has been highlighted to me quite clearly, and the criticality of this project, both to the chamber and this organisation more broadly. So we're holding ourselves to account in terms of producing this report to the council in public to ensure that what we say we do, we are doing, and where there are challenges with either timing or delivery or scope, that's reported through the appropriate process. We committed to that as part of that revised planning scheme program progress. We're not asking consultants to input into that report necessarily. It's part of their, part of our standard project management approach that we're taking through this to ensure that both through our board reports and then ultimately through this, it's just par for the course as we move through this. So I wouldn't consider it to be an extra or an additional task within the nature of this project for how we've set it up. We're very committed to ensuring that we're retaining a pretty tight hold on project governance and project delivery through this.
What prompted my question was that we are told that it costs some thousands of dollars to prepare a report and present it to council. I take it this report is not in that category.
No, it's work that we're doing anyway as part of our internal project governance to ensure that we're tracking along. In terms of the express exclusion of the CEO from the project board, certainly not for lack of input that our CEO has on the project, but rather the CEO is the chief executive officer, and everything reports in essence through him anyway. So part of the body of work and the intent is that the board meetings occur at ELT, of which the CEO is the chair of that meeting in any event. So certainly the CEO continues to have very strong oversight into the project, reflecting its importance across the organisation. It also allows, I guess, a degree of impartiality for the CEO to continue to challenge us and push us to ensure that the project's being delivered on time and on budget and delivering a high quality of work. So there's a reason, a method to that madness, although expressed quite bluntly within the report itself.
Yeah. Has that been copied from other areas of like government or government?
No, it's not necessarily our how we would ordinarily run a project board, but this project is certainly our most critical priority within the group. So we're putting all general managers sit on that project board.
Groundbreaking.
Councillor, I might interject. If I sat on the project board, there was only one level of escalation, and that was to the mayor or the chamber. So this allows me to interject if I'm of the view that it either is not going in the right direction prior to it actually coming to this room. So I'm quite comfortable with that decision. And Ed knows quite well that he won't keep an old planner out of the process.
The ISOPlan ePlan system is a software platform that council has already, and we have a subscription to that. And what it does is allow for council to host what's called an ePlan, which is a planning scheme that's interactively hosted, and you can scroll through rather than relying on PDFs and hard text documents. It also allows us, there's a program within that suite, within that software suite that allows for integration of artificial intelligence when that technology arrives and when it's suitably tested through. So what we're looking to do through this scheme and through hosting systems is be what we'd call AI ready. It's not going to be an AI scheme because they don't yet exist, but we want to make sure that we're drafting a product that is able to be understood by AI systems, and ultimately the leap between what we will have at the end of this body of work and what's needed to be AI or integrated into AI is much shorter in time. In terms of the scheme supply fund agreement, that's a $200,000 funding tranche that the state government provides to council to update elements of the current planning scheme to assist in the delivery of housing and refined removal of effectively red tape and promoting housing within the region. So that's a discrete part of the new planning scheme, and we'll look to fold that in as this body of work continues. In terms of the Planning and Development Policy and Technical Advice Reference Group, 7 members were selected through that body of work. Happy to provide the membership of that to Council after the meeting once I've confirmed the names within that. But the first meeting is occurring in a couple of weeks, and we'll induct them into the planning scheme program, and certainly those that have been informed of their success are very excited to be a part of that body of work going forward. I think I've covered all of it, but happy to take any other questions.
That last one, we do have a very good communications branch in council. Just wondering why the need to engage outside communication experts.
I might respond on that. Councillor, I'm putting my communications branch under a fair amount of pressure to up its performance across the whole organisation. If I divert them to focus on what will be a critical level of engagement through the planning scheme, I won't be able to deliver the other uplift that I want across the organisation. And as Ed has rightly pointed out, planning scheme correspondence and communication is actually quite technical, and the firms that we have engaged have got town planning backgrounds, which actually makes the ability to communicate to the public better because they actually understand the subject matter expert. So from my perspective, I think it is the right decision because it allows us then to progress the other activities that we need to do in uplifting while we focus on comms through the work that Ed has engaged through those consultants.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Bill, then Beck.
Thanks, Chair. Ed, I just had a question about the state reference group and your comments about the specialists, stakeholders from each of the departments. Do we know the makeup of that panel? Is there are they internal state government specialists or a range of commercial developer specialists?
No, they're only state interest. So it's the state interest review. So that's where the state interest review is actually undertaken by state government officers. So the officers represent all of the different state interests that the state has got listed to make sure that we're checking in on all those state interests, and they come from a range of departments. And that membership can change and alter. So if we find that we're running to have some specific we've got a specific challenge area, then we can actually invite others to come in. So it's relatively not fluid, but to ensure that it's actually representative specifically for what Toowoomba needs and what our region needs in our planning scheme.
Yeah, so it's internal stakeholders of state departments.
Internal stakeholders,
okay.
yes. And they're the representatives that represent our region as well.
Yep, thanks. Just one more, if I may. Ed, AI readiness. We're not there yet, but inevitably it will be forced down that corridor, I'd say. I guess it's hard looking forward from this point, but what does concern me is if we have any IP and our costs may not necessarily be reflective of other councils, other local government costs in relation to LGIP, and we all know we've got a cap, but I'm just a little bit concerned that we get forced down a one-size-fits-all avenue. And, you know, in the context of fast-growing regions with disparate problems and different sized communities within the region, as opposed to a region that's pretty much at capacity and has got a lot of its major trunk infrastructure in place already. And, you know, and I suspect that's why the caps came about how they did in the first place. So, on infrastructure charges. So I think we need to have our eyes open and be at the table is what I'm saying, I guess. And that's not for now, but while we're preparing, readiness position, are they fair comments, not, or what?
Look, I think the decision to transition or not is a decision that will need to be made in time. What we're looking to do, and that will involve, you know, is it the right solution? What we're looking to do, I guess, through this and being what I would call AI ready is very much the text of the planning scheme, making that clearly understood. And there's a part that's both AI ready and more importantly and far more critically at this point in time is it easily understood by the public? So drafting a scheme that is has clarity, quantitative measurements rather than sort of qualitative statements where they ought to be quantitative. That's the sort of work that we're looking to do, and hosting that in an environment that is both digitally enabled and able to be interpreted through those systems. So very much not looking to take, I guess, an AI system and impart that onto the scheme, but rather have a scheme that primarily and most importantly reflects the needs and the will of the council and the community, and have that delivered in a way that can be understood by large language models as opposed to being driven by one. So that's the focus.
Councillor Beck.
Thanks, Chair, through you. Thank you, General Manager Ed and Sonia, for the report and the update and the comprehensive answers that you've provided as well today. I just want to pick up on that technical advisory group, the reference group. So we had 25 EOIs, 7 have been selected, and General Manager, you just said that councillors would be advised once all of those have been contacted. But will the community also be advised and that list be made public as well?
At this point in time, the intent is that group informs officers in the council and is engaged by council to ensure that particular issues are balanced across their technical input and understanding. There was a very large subscription, 25 individual nominees down to 7. At this point in time, we've ummed and ahed a little bit internally around whether to publicise that list. We're very conscious that those people are engaged by council, and we don't want to introduce them to lobbying efforts to drive particular outcomes across groups. We're very much interested in their technical advice as relevant to their subject matter. So we weren't necessarily intending, but if it's the will of the council to publicise that list, then so be it, and we'll do so. But they're very much driven through a number of confidentiality agreements and other elements, with the primary focus on informing both the chamber and officers through that, rather than being, I guess, a channel for engagement for the community. If the community or special interest groups or anyone wants to engage with council on the planning scheme, there are a number of mechanisms that we'll have set up to do that. So that's the primary reason for not necessarily publicising those names at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. I think that I hear your comments about lobbying and engagement. I think they're very fair. The question I think we have to ask ourselves is, do we reasonably believe that those confidentiality agreements are so watertight so as to the composition of the membership won't be known? And if we honestly think that we can, the composition of that membership won't be known, then that's one matter. But if we think that they, just by ways, it will become known who those members are, then I think we need to have a conversation about who they are for the public as well, because otherwise it becomes sort of insider knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely, and completely respect that. The intent is not to tie up the membership and then the list of that membership in a confidentiality deed rather than the information that they'll be provided through the planning scheme itself. I suspect that there are folks that have been made members or been offered membership that would be talking to their colleagues within the industry and letting them know. So, it's both ways and have no issue either way.
Yeah, let's just have a conversation about that. Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? Mayor?
Thanks very much, Chair. Just more broadly, I guess, thank you, Ed and Sonia. The Shaping SEQ plan that's under review at the moment, what impact, if any, do you think might take place as a result of this process?
Thank you, Mayor, for the question. We are working very, very closely with the state. Their timeframes, it is a project that's running in parallel with our planning scheme project in terms of the timeframes. I have met with the acting director at the time to let them know that we are concerned and we want to make sure that we are engaged with them throughout the preparation of the SEQ regional plan to manage that risk. There is a program that's currently being finalised and confirmed with the department about their level of engagement, which includes a series of workshops where council staff will be able to be there for a day or a couple of days whilst they're actually drafting some of that regional plan material. I myself am a member of the PCG for that SEQ regional plan, so I will also be able to flag or raise any of those concerns. We will be having them as a member of that state interest reference group as well, so they will be seeing and tracking how we're updating. So all I can say is we're continuing to have that conversation to minimise that risk, and meeting with the department monthly, every couple of weeks, and I have that open line of communication. And we'll be trying to work through and manage that at all levels. So engagement with the state planner, engagement with the directors, engagement with the staff there. So it will not be unknown that we're working in parallel with their timeframes, and it's just how we continue that conversation through the preparation of this work.
Thank you. Second question is just in regard to, and more broadly, I guess, it seems there's quite a number of local governments that are going through this updating of planning schemes at the moment, and there seems to be a strong desire by the sitting government, state government, to fast track as much as they can these processes. Do you see that there's so much going on across other councils? Did you find it difficult to get consultants, I guess, on board? Was that an element that took more time than you potentially thought it would?
I think it's actually advantageous that there is so much activity really within planning schemes. So we had a very, very strong response to the tender applications. So we had about 27 consultants from across Australia submit up to 38 or 37, I think, was it 37? In response to our scheme. We have certainly taking the most advantage of that. So our team, the consultant teams that we do have got people in those teams that have worked on numerous planning schemes, currently working with other local authorities in their planning schemes as well. So we are doing our best to harness some of that knowledge and skills that's being gathered from other local authorities' expertise. There are also working groups, there's also consultation groups that are happening between staff such as myself that are happening across South East Queensland and the Darling Downs. So we're all keeping aware of what some of the issues that are arising, what's coming through on some of their projects. We do have a strong relationship with our own state state planning representative here. So as I said, we're meeting with them every month. So we are learning from other local authorities. Don't see that there's any risk or we've secured our consultants now, but rather we're trying to harness which is one of the other reasons for going out to these consultants, because they have been working on numerous different planning schemes around Queensland over the last few years. Some of them, they're still continuing to work with some of the other projects as well. So we're trying to take the best advantage of that knowledge and skill set.
Excellent. That's fantastic. And just following on a little bit on our own reference panel, was there anything in the applications that suggested that it would remain silent on who the panels are? Was there a confidentiality piece of that?
No, not as to membership, no.
Well, could I suggest, based on the quantum that you had and you're working through that at a group report at some stage, whether it's next week might be a bit late, but certainly if it's a late addition to your report next week, Ed, that it may actually give some strength to the effort that you've gone through as a planning team to actually get the brightest and best to help us with this project. And it may be advantageous actually to inform the community of the level of expertise that you have there. So I can see only upside, to be honest.
Absolutely, we'll take that on board.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Carey?
Yeah, thank you. Chair, I was just wondering, in relation to the reference group, there's 25 nominations received from all professions. The legal professions not mentioned, is that a given or not necessary?
At this point in time, we didn't see it quite necessary to engage those at the bar. We are looking to, as the planning scheme text is more committed and worked through, there will absolutely be legal reviews that council will need to commission, both to manage compensation and potential risks around compensation claims, but as well as the workability and legal robustness of the planning scheme itself. So quite a specific focus when we get to that point, and we're certainly looking to engage those in the profession through that.
Councillor, I'm actually quite happy with the approach. And I'm not being critical of my legal colleagues, but it's a completely different scheme if we take a legal approach to it rather than a land use planning approach to it. And I think the land use planning approach is the more appropriate situation for where we are as an organisation. We will then road test its legality through the drafting, but we want a document that actually provides clarity and certainty rather than furnishes the ability to be in court more often than we should be.
Councillor Trevor?
Thanks, Chair. Ed and Sonia, with the expertise of our experts that have been put on this panel of 7, and they're all mixed up in the government field, so to speak, would the timeframes of when it goes to state government be reduced because we should have it right?
That is the perfect goal. That is what we're working towards, Councillor, is to make sure that we can try and catch any of those issues that they have throughout these 6 weekly sessions, and make sure that once we do submit it to the state, there's only one page that comes back in that letter that's saying thank you very much, you can go to community consultation.
Okay, when we get that one page back, so we go to community consultations, how long is community consultation?
It's for 45 business days.
45 business days. Then we come back here and then we collate what's been said. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we will complete the statutory timeframes with consultation. There's an opportunity there for us to actually review that feedback that's received from the community. We do then have to submit to the state again to actually check that, yes, any changes that we've made as a result of that community consultation, or we've suitably considered the community feedback gathered through that stage. So that's why there's a few months there for us to review that feedback, check if there's any changes that we need to make, reconsult with our state, the state government before we bring it back to council for adoption, take it back to the state, and then be able to bring it back to council for adoption.
Okay, so we've got this timeline and we will hopefully aim for it or make it quicker.
I might just add a couple of comments there. We will meet our timeline because that's a commitment we've given you, but having been a state bureaucrat, I can't commit to what uncertainties we may get from that process. But as long as we meet our commitments and we provide the data, we'll work collectively with them, but the department will be under a fair bit of strain with considering the amount of work that's currently before them, but we're going to hit our targets, Councillor.
Councillor Tim had a question.
Oh, Chair, look, I was happy to move the officer's recommendation. I really liked the comment about experts, not activists. And and there's a bit of discussion around timelines. I think councillors also have to sign off on various stages of that, so where to play in maintaining that timeline. So anyway, Chair, I was reading the room that we'd finished questions and was happy to move. If there
Great
are
to
more,
hear.
I'm happy to move.
Seconded by Councillor Manteuffel. Oh, Councillor Bill, did you have one more last question? Okay.
Thanks, Chair. Through you to Ed or Sonia. without divulging details of the confidential attachment, we are confident that we're not going to pick school holidays for community consultation, are we? Aren't we?
Yes, councillor. I've done this a number of times, and that's the first thing to avoid.
Champion. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you, Ed and Sonia, and please send our thanks to your whole team for getting us to this stage. And I think it's great to see the project scheduled, the teams appointed, project underway, having the key milestones, providing accountability. Project governance is excellent, so thank you. So we have, I'll just read out the motion. That Council, 1, note the progress made on the Toowoomba Regional Planning Scheme for the period of 11 November 2025 to the 20th of February 2026. 2, approve a major change to the Toowoomba Regional Planning Scheme Project Management Plan to amend the project scheme to align with the new streamlined process for making planning schemes under Section 18 of Planning Act 2016 in accordance with the key milestone dates in confidential attachment 1. And number 3, make a request to the Director General of the Department of State Development, Infrastructure and Planning for a new Chief Executive notice about the process for making or amending a planning scheme under Section 18(3) of Planning Act 2016 for the new Toowoomba Region Planning Scheme in accordance with the key milestone dates and the process identified in confidential attachment 1. I have a mover, Councillor Tim, and a seconder, Councillor Trevor. All those in favour? Wonderful. It's moved unanimously. Thank you. And I can now conclude our meeting at 9:45.
Welcome to the Water and Waste Committee meeting of Toowoomba Regional Council. This meeting is open to the public and will be live streamed. I'd like to thank those of you who are in the room today and acknowledge everyone watching via Council's social media channels. I'd remind councillors to click Join Meeting in broad view. I adopt the welcome to country acknowledgement of traditional owners recited earlier today. The attendance, including apologies, leave of absence and declarations of conflict of interest, there are nil advised. Noting the leave of absence of Councillor James O'Shea, but no resolution is required there. There are no declarations of prescribed interest or declarable interests. The item on the agenda today is the West Creek Sewerage Catchment Study Planning Report, and that will be delivered by our Acting General Manager, Natalie Plum. Welcome, Natalie.
Good morning, councillors, and thank you for having me this morning while Jake takes a well-deserved break. The West Creek Sewerage Planning Study combines 2 previously endorsed planning reports encompassing the areas of Drayton, Glenvale, Darling Heights, South Toowoomba and Harristown, and includes updates to take account of new growth figures, network deficiencies, and to make operational and maintenance improvements across the network. This report is presented to you today for endorsement to provide clarity to the development industry and inform Council's capital delivery program and priorities. I'm happy to present the balance of the report to you as read and take any questions as required. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Just before I ask councillors for questions, I noticed that from the report there were 8 pump stations to be considered for decommissioning. Just to a layperson, that sounds like a fairly substantial decrease in the capacity of the system. Can you explain how that's going to work?
Yeah, so the intention of that is to optimise our long-term operational and maintenance costs. So it was a deliberate strategy, and those pump stations are being replaced by gravity mains and the optimisation of larger pump stations within the study catchment.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Tim and Councillor Edwina.
I've got a couple. Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Natalie, and your team. So we're looking at $20 million to get these updated over the next few years, and I note the motion says future capital works to be involved in this, so that'll probably be one of the things that goes into the capital works before we see it. But I suppose I just want, this is the core business of council, so that when you flush the toilet, it all goes eventually to Watala. Just some conversation around the timelines and the forward budgeting. How have those conversations gone from your side?
So I think in the next 2 years, we need about 16 million. I think it's 24 up to about 2031. So we have been looking at the works required in the draft capital works program for next year to accommodate that, and that will be finalised subject to the endorsement of this report today. So it's being accounted for in our capital planning.
Yeah, thanks for that. I suppose my thought bubble was, when the community asks, what do we spend the money on? We get the report that says what needs upgrading, and a fair amount of our capital works is water and waste, and then it comes to this and we say yes, and that formulates our capital work. So well done on getting those studies to influence the rollout of future capital. I appreciate that. I just had a question, and I was going to be really smart, and it's like page 50 something in the attachment 1, but you've also put it in the report. So around the PIA, we have to upgrade these works so that the PIA can function as a PIA that you can develop within that. Is that under stress of not maintaining our PIA, or are you confident that our current, as it's written, priority infrastructure area can be maintained with these works?
So this study area is within the existing PIA, so we do have an obligation to deliver the trunk infrastructure associated with bringing development on board in that catchment area. These works will enable about an extra 3,800 lots to be delivered to market over the coming years.
Councillor Edwina.
Thank you, Chair. And mine follows on from Councillor Tim with the additional planning and budget. Just there on page 5 of 6, we're looking at an increased unit rate, and growth rates used in the study result in an increase of 12.6 million in required trunk infrastructure. And you've just commented on draft capital works that we're planning on now. So just for the community to understand, if we're going to have to spend an extra 12.6 million, and apologies, this is I haven't given any notice for this question, but where will that come from, just for the community? Do we take something away from our capital works, or do we look at reducing something elsewhere? How do we just pop in another 12.6 million?
These works have been on our planning horizon, so we've had to reorganise our priorities, but across the water and waste capital delivery portfolio, we have been aware that these works have been required and they've been part of our existing planning.
Okay, so the extra 12.6 million will come from...
adjustments within other priorities across the balance of the region. So,
Great, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Trevor.
Thanks, Chair. With the decommissioning of 8 sites, what savings will there be with decommissioning those compared to the money we're going to put in to do all this other work?
Yvonne, I'm not sure if you've got the answer to that, whether the team's had the time to undertake that costing yet.
No, sorry, Councillor, we don't have a detailed estimate of the operational savings at this stage, but that will form part of the assessment moving forward once this has been endorsed by Council, and we can look into those operational savings.
Thank you. It'd be worthwhile knowing. Yeah. And the news thing will be gravity. How come we haven't used gravity before?
Again, it's just optimisation of the network. As Natalie mentioned before, upsizing some of the pump stations, leveraging a new gravity system, particularly in the Drayton area, and making that a more efficient system. So it's just looking at how we can optimise the network.
Thank you.
So I think it also comes from development within the region, so we're able to connect to those existing gravity mains that have been put in place from development that's occurred as well.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, the motion that will be moved, hopefully, is that Council endorse the West Creek Sewerage Catchment Study Planning Report 2025, and the report be used in the formulation of future capital works programs and informing the local government infrastructure plan. You have a mover, Councillor Bill and Councillor Melissa, seconding it. Any discussion? If not, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors.
That concludes the meeting. I'd like to thank Acting General Manager Natalie and your staff for the presentation of the program. Thank you.
Of Toowoomba Regional Council for March. Meeting's open to the public. Are we right, Deanne? Yes. And will also be live streamed. I'd like to thank those of you who are in the room with us today and acknowledge anyone who's watching via Council's social media channels. Please, councillors, don't forget to click join meeting in board view. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse the lands on which we meet today, the Western Waka Waka, the Guyabal, the Jadawa and the Biggambill peoples, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the knowledge, the rich traditions and the bold ambitions of Australia's First Peoples. We have no apologies and we have noting that the leave of absence for Councillor James O'Shea, so there's no resolution required. I would like to take this opportunity, with your indulgence, to publicly recognise in his absence our retiring General Manager of ISG, Mike Brady, for his outstanding contributions to our community over his 15 years plus with Toowoomba Regional Council. During his time, many innovations and improvements have happened in our ISG and therefore with our council, including numerous flood disaster events, including the major flood recovery of January 2011, which has just passed 15 years, which was the largest program of recovery combining staff teams and our contractors. Much was achieved in building flood mitigation infrastructure since that event in our city, and over our region. And it leaves an amazing, lasting legacy for our community who probably don't understand a whole lot of that, but they see it in their everyday life every time we're threatened, and that infrastructure has stood the test of time with every disaster event that has happened since then. He has been amazing in mentoring our young engineers and building staff skills, including bridge building skills, which weren't in any way in our staff in 2011 when he arrived. He's recognised staff by introducing staff awards, which now the rest of the community, the rest of our council areas follow on, which is really amazing because our staff can be recognised by their peers for their contributions during the year. He's established PD breakfast events for engineers and contractors to support RPEQ requirements and ongoing uplifting of qualifications and understanding, and including agreements with Engineers Australia, which the first one was signed here in 2009 when he was the Queensland President of Engineers Australia, IPWEQ, Queensland and Northern Territory. I know our council and our community will join me in wishing Mike and Amanda a long and healthy retirement. Thank you very much for the indulgence there, but I do believe, being the last committee meeting, that I'm able to speak out that it's timely and appropriate that we recognise the long contribution that has been given to this community by our General Manager, Mike Brady. As we have no agenda events, I now conclude the meeting and thank everyone for their attendance. Thank you, Sal and Deanne and our general managers that are present and our staff. And that's, I conclude, and don't forget to remind councillors to leave the meeting in your agenda, and we now move on to Environment and Community. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Environment and Community Committee meeting of the Toowoomba Regional Council. This meeting is open to the public and will also be live streamed. I would like to thank those of you who are in the room with us today and acknowledge everyone watching via Council's social media channels. In opening the meeting, I acknowledge the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse these lands we meet on today, the Western Waka Waka, the Guyabal and the Jarrawa peoples, and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the knowledge, rich traditions and bold ambitions of Australia's First Peoples. There are no apologies advised, and I do note there is a leave of absence for Councillor James O'Shea, which requires no resolution. As there is no business for this Environment and Community Committee meeting, I will declare the meeting closed.
Good morning, councillors and Toowoomba Region. I would like to welcome you to the Corporate Services Committee meeting for the 10th of March 2026. Please ensure that you have joined the meeting, councillors. I welcome you all to this meeting, particularly those that are watching through our social media channels. I'd like to open the meeting and acknowledge the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse the lands on which we meet today, the Western Waka Waka, the Guyabal and the Jarrawa peoples, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the knowledge, the rich traditions and the bold ambitions of Australia's First Peoples. I have no apologies, and I also do note the leave of absence by Councillor James O'Shea, and no resolution is required. And as we have no items for this meeting, I will declare the meeting closed, and please ensure that you leave the meeting, councillors. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to the Economic Development Committee meeting of Toowoomba Regional Council. This meeting is open to the public and will also be live streamed. I'd like to thank those of you in the room with us today and acknowledge everyone watching via Council social media channels. As I have already acknowledged our traditional owners today, I will move on to the fact that we have no apologies to note and a notice noting a leave of absence for Councillor O'Shea. However, no resolution is required. As we have no items to discuss, I would like to conclude this meeting. Thank you.